It is a Sunday morning in mid-July. You walk out to your back porch with your coffee, expecting to see green, reaching vines. Instead, you find a miniature disaster. Your heirloom tomatoes are yellowed and drooping from root rot. A cloud of tiny black gnats rises from the foul-smelling soil of your potted peas. The cucumber leaves are smothered in powdery mildew, and the seeds you planted 2 weeks ago have rotted into mush. You drive straight to the garden center, and the clerk loads your cart. A $15 fungicide, an $18 pest spray, a $12 root stimulator, and a $10 disinfectant. You just spent $70 on 5 different toxic chemicals to pour onto the food feeding your family. Now I want you to sit with this. That $70 pile of brightly colored plastic bottles and harsh, unpronounceable chemicals is an illusion sold to you by an industry that profits from your panic. There is a perfect replacement for every single one of those 5 expensive bottles. It is a plain, brown bottle sitting in your bathroom medicine cabinet right now, and it costs less than $2 at any grocery store in the country. It contains no artificial dyes. It leaves 0 toxic chemical residue behind in the earth. When it finishes its work, it breaks down completely, rapidly, and naturally into nothing but pure water and pure oxygen. Yet that single $2 bottle will cure the root, rot suffocating your plants. Kill the fungus gnats breeding in your soil. Cure the powdery mildew on your leaves. Wake up your stubborn seeds and sterilize your tools better than harsh bleach. My name is Daniel Yoder. I am Amish, and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My family has been working this soil for generations, long before the first commercial garden center ever opened its doors. We do not pour synthetic chemical poisons onto the earth that grows our food. But we are not blind to science either. We know the difference between an internet gimmick and a fundamental law of chemistry. Today I'm going to show you how to use that $2 brown bottle to handle the 5 most expensive problems in your garden. I am going to walk you through the exact tested ratios for each job. And because I will not tell you half a truth to make myself look clever, I am going to give you the honest, sobering truth about the one real danger this method holds. How using it incorrectly can actually turn your living soil into dead dirt, and exactly what you must do to prevent that. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will understand how to save your garden for pennies. And you will understand why the multi-billion-dollar gardening industry hopes you never learn how to do it. Let me start by telling you the chemistry of what is inside that little brown bottle. Because once you understand the plain science of it, you will not need to memorize the tricks. You will simply know how it works. You already know what water is. The chemical formula for water is H2O, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. It is the foundation of all life. Hydrogen peroxide, the liquid in that brown bottle, has a chemical formula of H2O2. It is exactly the same as water, but it has 1 extra atom of oxygen attached to it. That is the entire difference. Just 1 extra drop of oxygen. But that extra atom of oxygen changes everything. It is highly unstable. It does not want to be there. It wants to break free and escape into the air. When hydrogen peroxide comes into contact with organic material, bacteria or fungal spores, that extra oxygen atom violently breaks away. It creates a microscopic explosion of pure oxygen. The scientists call this oxidation. It literally burns the pathogens away. When you pour hydrogen peroxide on a cut on your finger and you see it foam and bubble white, that foaming is not magic. That is the extra oxygen atoms breaking away and oxidizing the bacteria inside your wound. Now apply that to your dying plant. When you overwater a plant, or when it sits in heavy, poorly drained soil, the air spaces in the dirt fill up with water. The roots begin to suffocate. They cannot breathe in that wet, oxygen-starved environment a specific kind of bacteria and fungi begins to breed. They are called anaerobic bacteria, meaning they thrive where there is no oxygen. These anaerobic bacteria are the villains that cause root rot. They eat the suffocating roots of your plant, turning them into brown, mushy slime. That is why your overwatered soil smells sour like a stagnant swamp. When you pour a diluted mixture of hydrogen peroxide into that suffocating soil, that unstable extra oxygen atom breaks free. It floods the soil with pure, raw oxygen. The anaerobic bacteria, the ones destroying your plant, are instantly oxidized and destroyed. At the exact same time, all that newly released oxygen aerates the soil, giving the drowning plant roots the vital breath of air they have been desperately fighting for. The disease is destroyed, the roots are oxygenated, and the only things left behind in your soil are pure water and pure oxygen. It is elegant, it is incredibly cheap, and it works. Here are the exact step-by-step instructions for the 5 different jobs this bottle can do. I am going to give you the precise ratios. You must follow them carefully, because too strong a mixture will burn the delicate tissues of your plants, and too weak a mixture will do nothing at all. First, the single most important rule. You must use standard 3% hydrogen peroxide. This is the common, cheap, brown bottle sold in the first aid aisle of any pharmacy. Do not, under any circumstances, use 35% food-grade or industrial hydrogen peroxide for these recipes. 35% hydrogen peroxide is a highly concentrated, dangerous chemical. It will burn your skin on contact, and it will instantly kill any plant you pour it on. Stick to the 3% pharmacy bottle. It is safe, it is cheap, and it is exactly what we need. Benefit number 1, curing root rot and aerating the soil. If your plant is yellowing and wilting, despite the soil being wet, and the earth smells like a foul swamp, you are dealing with root rot. Step 1. Stop watering. Let the soil dry out as much as you safely can before treating it. If the pot is sitting in a saucer of standing water, dump the saucer immediately. You cannot cure drowning while the plant is still underwater. Step 2. The mix. You are going to mix 1 part of 3% hydrogen peroxide to 10 parts of water. For a standard watering can, that means you measure out exactly 1/2 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide, and you pour it into 5 cups of tap water. Stir it gently. Step 3. The application. Pour this mixture generously directly into the soil at the base of the plant. Do not splash it all over the leaves. Pour it strictly into the root zone. As the liquid soaks down into the soil, you will likely hear a faint crackling or fizzing sound, and you may see tiny white bubbles forming on the surface of the mud. Do not be alarmed. That is the sound of the anaerobic root rot dying. That is the oxygen breaking free and going to work. Step 4, walk away. Do not water that plant again until the top 2 inches of the soil are completely bone dry to the touch. The roots need time to breathe the new oxygen and begin putting out fresh, healthy white root hairs. Benefit number 2, eradicating fungus gnats and soil pests. If you have tiny black flies hovering around the surface of your potting soil, you have fungus gnats. They are not just a nuisance. Their microscopic larvae live in the top inch of your soil and actively chew on the fine, delicate root hairs of your plants. Step 1. The mix. Fungus gnat larvae have a protective outer casing, so we need a slightly stronger mixture. Mix 1 part of 3% hydrogen peroxide to 4 parts of water. For a small watering pitcher, that is 1 cup of hydrogen peroxide mixed with 4 cups of water. Step 2. The application. The larvae live exclusively in the top layer of the soil. You do not need to drench the entire pot down to the bottom. Simply spray or pour this mixture thoroughly over the top 1 to 2 inches of the soil until the surface is completely saturated. Step 3. The result. The hydrogen peroxide will immediately oxidize and destroy the soft-bodied larvae and the eggs hidden in the dirt. Just as importantly, it kills the soil algae and fungus that the gnats feed on, cutting off their food supply. Repeat this top watering once a week until you no longer see any flying adults. Your gnat problem will vanish without a single drop of toxic aerosol spray in your house. Benefit number 3, controlling powdery mildew and foliar fungus. If the leaves of your squash, cucumbers, or roses look like they have been dusted with white flour, you are dealing with powdery mildew. It is a fungal infection that spreads on the wind and can decimate a crop in a matter of days. Step 1, the mix. Because leaves are delicate, we must use a much weaker dilution. Mix 1 part of 3% hydrogen peroxide to 20 parts of water. A simple way to measure this is 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 quart of clean water in a fine mist spray bottle. Step 2, the application. Spray the affected leaves thoroughly, making sure to coat the undersides of the leaves as well, where the fungus often hides. Now here is the crucial warning for foliar spraying. You must only do this early in the morning or late in the evening. Never ever spray a plant's leaves in the direct baking heat of the midday sun. The sun will react with the moisture and burn the tissue. Furthermore, absolutely do not use this spray on plants with fuzzy or hairy leaves, such as African violets or geraniums. The tiny hairs on the leaves will trap the hydrogen peroxide droplets against the plant tissue, acting like miniature magnifying glasses, and the leaves will suffer severe chemical burns. Stick to smooth-leaved vegetables and ornamentals, and always test a single leaf before spraying the entire plant. Benefit number 4, waking up stubborn seeds and preventing rot. Some seeds have incredibly hard outer shells, or they have been sitting in a drawer for 3 years and have lost their vigor. When you plant them in cold, damp soil, they often succumb to fungal diseases and rot away before they can ever sprout. Gardeners call this damping off. Step 1, the mix. In a small glass jar or bowl, mix 1 tablespoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of warm water. Step 2, the soak. Drop your seeds into the jar and let them soak for exactly 4 hours. Do not leave them overnight. The peroxide performs 2 vital tasks during this soak. First, it kills any dormant fungal spores or bacterial pathogens resting on the outer coat of the seed. Second, the oxidative action slowly eats away and softens the tough outer hull of the seed while pushing fresh oxygen directly into the seed embryo. Step 3, rinse and plant. After 4 hours, strain the seeds. Rinse them briefly under plain water and plant them immediately in your seed-starting mix. You will see germination rates improve dramatically, and the seedlings will emerge faster, stronger, and free of the damping off fungus. Benefit number 5, disinfecting pots and garden tools. Every time you use a pair of pruning shears to cut a diseased branch, and then use those same shears to trim a healthy plant, you are spreading the disease yourself. Reusing old plastic nursery pots without cleaning them does the exact same thing. Step 1, the application. You do not need to dilute it for this. You can use straight 3% hydrogen peroxide, or mix it half and half with water if you want to stretch the bottle. Step 2, the method. Put it in a spray bottle and spray your pruning shears, trowels, and the inside of your old pots. Let it sit for 2 minutes, then wipe them dry with a clean rag. Why is this better than bleach? Bleach is highly corrosive to metal over time, and it leaves behind a toxic chemical salt residue. Hydrogen peroxide kills the pathogens just as effectively, but it breaks down into water and oxygen, leaving your tools clean and your future soil completely uncontaminated. Now, I want to take a moment, because we have reached the most important part of this entire lesson. This is where I must be radically honest with you. If I do not explain this next part clearly, I will be no better than the charlatans on the internet, promising you magic tricks without consequences. I will tell you the plain, unvarnished truth, because the soil deserves our respect. Hydrogen peroxide is a broad-spectrum oxidizer. I want you to remember that term. Broad spectrum. That means it is utterly blind. It does not possess a moral compass. It does not know the difference between a bad microbe and a good microbe. When you pour it into your potted plant or your garden bed to cure root rot, it behaves exactly like a forest fire or like a heavy dose of prescription antibiotics in the human stomach. It wipes the slate clean. Yes, it aggressively kills the anaerobic bacteria, causing the root rot. Yes, it destroys the fungus gnat larva. But it also kills the incredibly vital, beneficial aerobic bacteria in the soil. It kills the microscopic mycorrhizal fungi, the vast, invisible, underground network of living threads that attach to plant roots, process nutrients, and feed your plant. When you use a heavy soil drench of hydrogen peroxide, you are effectively sterilizing your soil. You are turning a living, breathing, biological ecosystem into a dead, sterile sponge. Therefore, you must never, ever use hydrogen peroxide as a daily, weekly, or routine fertilizer. It is not a vitamin. It is not a supplement. It is an emergency room treatment. You use it only when the plant is actively dying, when the rot has taken over, when you have no other choice but to perform a drastic intervention to save the drowning roots. And because you have sterilized the soil to save the plant, you are left with a mandatory, non-negotiable next step. This is the step that 99% of internet, gardening videos, conveniently forget to mention. And it is the reason so many people try this trick, see a temporary improvement, and then watch their plant slowly starve to death a month later. Once the root rot is cured, once the gnats are dead, and once the soil has dried out for 2 or 3 days, you must re-inoculate the earth. You must intentionally put the good guys back into the dirt, or the soil will remain dead, unable to feed the plant, and completely vulnerable to an even worse fungal takeover because there are no beneficial defenders left to fight it off. How do you do this? It is incredibly simple, and it requires no chemicals. You take a handful of rich, dark, organic compost or a scoop of earthworm castings, and you sprinkle it over the top layer of the pot. Or you brew a simple compost tea by soaking a shovel full of good garden dirt in a bucket of water for a day, and you water the plant with that brown liquid. By doing this, you are seeding the sterile dirt with millions of good, healthy, oxygen-loving microbes. They will rapidly multiply, rebuild the mycorrhizal network, process the nutrients in the soil, and feed your recovering plant. First, you use the brown bottle to stop the bleeding and kill the disease. Then you use compost to heal the earth and restore the balance. That is the complete cycle. That is how a responsible farmer treats the ground. Now I want to take a moment to look at the bigger picture, because this is the part that matters deeply to me, and it should matter to you. Think about who profits when your plants begin to die. Think about the entire structure of the modern garden center and the massive agricultural chemical industry behind it. If a simple $2 bottle of hydrogen peroxide can cure root rot, eliminate soil pests, cure powdery mildew, aerate the soil, and act as a powerful seed-starting stimulant, why has nobody at the big box store ever mentioned it to you? Why is there not a large, helpful sign in the nursery section pointing you toward the pharmacy aisle? The answer is the same. Answer I have to give you in nearly every video I make. There is no money to be made in a $2 multi-purpose solution that lasts a homeowner for an entire year. The garden center does not want to sell you a single solution. They have built a multi-billion-dollar empire based on an illusion. The illusion is that nature is endlessly complicated, utterly terrifying, and entirely broken into dozens of separate, isolated problems. And conveniently, they manufacture a separate, expensive plastic bottle to fix every single one of those isolated problems. They sell you a $15 bottle of copper fungicide for the mildew. They sell you an $18 bottle of synthetic pesticide for the gnats. They sell you a $12 bag of chemical rooting hormone for your seeds. They sell you a $10 jug of bleach-based cleaner for your pots. They fragment nature, and then they monetize your panic. When a gardener sees a plant turning brown and dying, they feel a sense of failure. They feel a sense of urgency. The industry knows that a panicked gardener with a dying heirloom tomato plant will pay almost any price to save it. So they line the aisles with brightly colored labels, promising instant miracles, packed with synthetic compounds that stay in the soil, leach into the groundwater, and throw the natural ecosystem even further out of balance. They do not want you to understand the concept of soil equilibrium. They do not want you to understand that root rot is simply a lack of oxygen, or that pests thrive where plants are already weakened. If you understand that, you stop buying their products. They want you permanently dependent on their interventions. They want you on a leash, walking into their store every spring, pulling out your wallet to buy the same temporary, toxic fixes year after year. My grandfather, who worked this Lancaster County soil, with a team of draft horses and hands that looked like worn leather, did not have a garden center to drive to. He did not have access to aisles of synthetic fungicides. What he had was a profound, quiet understanding of balance. He understood that the soil is not just dead dirt holding a plant upright. It is a living, breathing organism. He knew that if the soil was too wet, it was drowning. He knew that the earth needed to exhale. We use hydrogen peroxide, not because it is a fancy modern hack, but because it mimics the natural, oxidative cleansing of a powerful thunderstorm breaking across a stagnant field. It delivers oxygen. It restores balance. We keep this knowledge alive in our community because we refuse to be tethered to systems that drain our wallets while poisoning our land. A family that can diagnose a failing crop, understand the biological cause, and fix it safely for $2 is a family that cannot be easily manipulated by a salesman. That independence, the quiet confidence of knowing how to care for your own property with simple, honest tools, is the greatest inheritance we can pass down to our children. So here is what I want you to do this weekend. I do not want you to just watch this and forget it. I want you to walk into your bathroom, open the medicine cabinet, and find that brown bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide. Then, I want you to walk through your house and out onto your porch. Look closely at your potted plants. Look for the one that has been struggling. The one with the yellowing leaves, the one where the soil feels heavy, dense, and smells slightly sour. The one you have been overwatering with the best of intentions. Take a glass jar, pour in 1/2 cup of the peroxide, and mix it with 5 cups of tap water. Pour it slowly into the root zone of that struggling plant. Get close to the soil. Listen for the faint crackle. Look for the tiny white bubbles. That is the sound of the anaerobic disease dying. That is the visual proof of raw oxygen, flooding the root system, breathing life back into a drowning organism. Let the pot dry out completely over the next few days. Then, go out to your yard, grab a handful of good, rich compost or worm castings, and sprinkle it over the top of the soil to put the life back into the earth. Water it in gently. You will have saved your plant. You will have cured the disease, and you will have done it for pennies, using nothing but the fundamental laws of chemistry and nature. $2 and 5 minutes of your time against $70 and a shopping cart full of toxins. That is the choice, once you have the eyes to see it clearly. Tell me in the comments below, what is the one plant you have accidentally loved to death by overwatering? Was it an indoor house plant, a tomato in a bucket, a prized rose bush? What insect or fungus is costing you the most money in your garden right now? And what state do you live in? I read every single one of these comments. The stories you share, the failures and the successes, are exactly what teaches the new gardeners. Reading along more than I ever could, alone. Next time, since we have been speaking so deeply about restoring the life and the microbiome of the soil, I am going to show you how the Amish build the absolute finest, richest, most biologically active fertilizer in the world. And we do it using nothing but the kitchen scraps you are currently throwing into the garbage can. A pile of dry leaves, and a specific method of turning it that costs absolutely $0. It is the natural, necessary next step after learning how to cleanse your soil today. Until then, respect the soil. Do not overwater. Keep your seeds dry until you are ready. And remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.